Hey, everybody, this is Tony. And the purpose of this recording is to orient anybody who would be interested in learning how to present our Starting Your Family Tree presentation and being effective at it. So I'm going to have a few opening comments, suggestions, tips, if you will. And then I've recorded the entire presentation. The idea being that you would listen to my tips and techniques and then go through the presentation. And in that way get familiar with it and do that until you are comfortable enough with the material that you can feel comfortable present yourself. So a few tips for an effective presentation. Uh, as you go through the presentation, you'll note that there's several pages that refer to DGS events like our seminars or upcoming meetings and library events and other things going on at the library. So just go through the presentation and update those slides so that they are reflecting current events or things that will be current at the time that you give the presentation. First of all, just make sure you've got all your facts right about the date of the meeting, the time that it's going to start, the amount of time that you have for the presentation. Confirm that you have enough time allocated for the whole thing. And this should be about an hour, 45 minutes or so for the presentation, and then time for questions, and of course, the location. Ask that they provide you with a projector or a large TV of some kind and a PA system for you to use. The connectivity into the TV or the projector preferably probably be an HDMI connection. That's the most universal and at the moment kind of the standard. But you just want to make sure that the computer that you're using is capable of connecting with it, and that you have enough cable, to position it where you want. So those are good details to work out ahead of time with whoever you're giving the presentation to. Also, you will want to provide them with a copy of the handout in advance so that they can make copies for the number of attendees that are going to be present. That is the one thing we generally ask the host for the meeting to do, is to do that in advance. Be sure to bring some handout materials with you. As a rule, we generally bring some DGS membership brochures, that one-page current events thing that lists, the upcoming meetings, talks about the SIGs, um, postcards for upcoming seminars. Have some of those, and then a sign-up sheet. Encourage people if they're not currently, getting our material, to sign up and make sure that the sign-up sheet, if it gets filled out, gets forwarded to the director of membership for them to add them into our vertical response mailing list. So those are the things you ought to have with you when you show up at the presentation. I just encourage you to really stop for a minute and consider the audience. This presentation is designed for people who have very little or no experience in genealogy, so that most of what is going to be presented to them will be new. So think about it for just a second. They're already going to be, like trying to drink out of a fire hose. So there is a lot of information in here, although it is just basic. So as you're presenting your material, I do want you to draw on your experiences as a genealogist. And so, if you're talking about a census, you can talk about the importance of it and the kind of material, um, but really try to avoid throwing in too much additional details or things that are just not really relevant. When you're talking about choosing a family tree software, um, you don't need to talk about how you had four trees and you merged it into one and you split it back. That's way too much information. The concepts we're trying to present here are very basic, and the idea of using a genealogy software is probably, already kind of shell shocking. We don't need to go really deeply into that. So I guess just say, kind of, I can't go back. Stick to the script and don't elaborate too much and add too much information. Do make sure you're comfortable with using PowerPoint and can use it effectively. And so make sure you're comfortable using the presenters mode. And that's a real good way to see, the upcoming slide and the notes that have been added to there. So just make sure you're really comfortable with that. You'll see that many of these slides require some manual advances to reveal information. And so I want you to encourage you to use that feature. Don't just get to the slide and go click, 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 and say, okay, well, here, you can read all the 6 bullet points there. My bias, I wrote the presentation. I use that as a reveal thing so that as I reveal each point, I kind of stop and talk about what it is that point is, the point that it's trying to make. And then I reveal the next one and talk about that. It's a much more effective way to present information than to just dump them all up there. So just, try to take that into account as you are working with us. Okay, so with all of that as background, what follows is going to be me running through this material and making the presentation. Takes me about 51 minutes, just a bit under, to get through everything. And so enjoy. Thanks. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Tony Hansen. I'm currently serving as the president for the Dallas Genealogical Society, and I've been researching my family for the past 25 years. What I'm here to talk about today is starting your family tree. We're going to go over some very basics about genealogy and some of the things that are involved in beginning to become a genealogist. And by the end of this presentation, you should understand enough to be able to get started and record information about your own family. We're going to talk about four main topics today. I'm going to talk a little bit about some basic genealogical tools and some terminology. We'll talk a bit about how you can manage your information. I'll also talk about some additional resources you can use to expand the search for your information once you've kind of done the first pass of what you know. And then we'll talk about some additional resources with particular emphasis on recording your own story. Now, hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll agree that it is important for all of us to make sure that we leave behind some record of our lives for people that will be researching us after we're gone. So let's start with some discussion about genealogical tools and terminology. This is kind of the basic thing that all genealogists start with, either in paper or electronic format, and it's referred to as a pedigree chart. You use it to record basic information about each person in your family. And there's four kind of main things that we talk about in genealogy about each person that we strive to get. The name of the person, their birth date and where they were born, marriage information and information about who their spouse and who their children are, and then death information. If that person has passed on, when did they die and where did they die and where are they buried? Collectively, this is all referred to often as vital records. You'll also hear it referred to as BMDs for births, marriages, and deaths. And again, this is kind of the basic uh, information you want to gather about everybody in your family. And as you'll see, you'll want to expand from there and collect more information, both to help you fill in all these blanks and to collect some additional information about their lives. In doing research, you always start with what you know. So start with yourself or the person that you happen to be researching if you're doing it for somebody else, and document everything you know about you or that person you're starting with. And then go to the next generation, do the same thing, and keep going until you've recorded everything that you know about the family. At this point, don't worry about blanks, don't worry about things that you don't know. This is just the very first step to get you started. As I said, you'll start with yourself and record the BMDs, the birth, the marriage. Well, if it's yourself, there won't be any death information, but all the information that you know about you. Then you step to your parents. The top box up there would be your father. The bottom box would be your mother. And so record information that you know about them. Then you would move to your grandparents. And so you would start with that top box being your father's father or your grandfather. Below that would be your father's mother or one of your grandmothers. And then moving down, your mother's father and your mother's mother. In this pedigree chart, it's always to start with the man on the top and the bottom and the female underneath. As you complete the information for your grandparents, and you move back another generation to your great grandparents and record what you know about them. And as I said, you keep doing this process, documenting what you know about your family. There are some conventions that you use when you're recording information. And when it comes to names, you always use the name that the person was given at birth. So any woman on your chart are going to be recorded using their maiden name. And as you see, there are various ways that you record other names that people go by. So, for example, as a woman gets married and changes her name, you'll have a place to record that as well. So you do want to note any aliases or any alternate names that people are known by, because that's going to aid you as you start searching and expanding your search looking for more information. We record dates differently in the United States than most of the rest of the world. And in genealogy, we have adopted kind of the worldwide standard. So in the United States, we record the month first, and then the day, and then the year. The rest of the world and the entire genealogical community records it as day, and then month, and then the year. And so it's important to understand that convention and make sure that you're consistent in how you record dates in your materials. Because as I said, genealogists comply with the world standard and do it day, and then month, and then year. So here's some examples of some dates as a genealogist would record them. So for example, the Dallas Genealogical Society held our first meeting on the 26th of October, 1954. That would be abbreviated a bit, 26/10/1954 or 26-10-1954. All of these are correct genealogical acceptable ways of documenting dates. Locations, we also start with the smallest location and build bigger. We talk about first the city, the county, the state, and then the country. The county, if that's applicable to the state that you're talking about, or the country that you're talking about. So, for example, if you're talking about Dallas County, you would write it as Dallas, Texas, United States. And that would be assumed to be referring to the county of Dallas. We don't write the word county out, it's just assumed because there's no city preceding it that we're talking about the county. If we were talking about the city of Dallas, we would say Dallas, Dallas, Texas, United States. And again, that would assume to be talking about the city of Dallas in the county of Dallas in the state of Texas in the United States. Pedigree charts also have a numbering system, and this is useful for a number of reasons. The very first position, very cleverly, is referred to as the number one position. Then the person's father is the number two, and their mother is number three. Then again, up in the grandparents, it starts with the father's father, number four. His wife would be number five, and then the mother's father at the number six, and his wife at number seven. And it just keeps repeating as this tree stretches out forever and ever. So it's, if you're really in the know, you say, "Oh, I'm talking about my number four," to a genealogist, they should, be able to pretty quickly figure out what we're talking about. But as you'll see when we start printing off some reports that are available in some of the software that you may want to use, these numbers are also carried forward there and are very helpful to in understanding where you are as you're reading the report. So this is used several places. Now, what about other relatives? I mean, this is great about recording information about your parents, but what about your siblings, for example, or your cousins and aunts and uncles? The standard form does not have any place to record this information, so there is another form that is frequently used for this purpose. And that form is referred to as the family group sheet. And as its name implies, it has information about a family group. So you'll see at the top of the form, we have a place to record information about the father. Below that, information about the mother. And below that, information for the children. Now that's kind of hard to see, so let's zoom in a bit. So here's the top of the form. You'll see that in fact, the form prompts you to record the date in the proper format, day, month, year. But this is where you record information about the father, his birth, um, marriages, death, and burial, if that's appropriate. And notice that there's even space down towards the bottom of that section to record his father and his mother's name. And then, of course, that couple would have their own family group sheet as you continue the process. A little further down the form, below the male, is the place for information for the mother. And again, it's an identical set of information, this time about his wife, though. As you step further down the form, then there's a place where you record information about their children. So again, it's kind of hard to see, but there's information about the birth, the date of the marriage, and their death if appropriate. And you can write in the name of the spouse. And so with this form, you have kind of a complete view of an entire family: parents, grandparents, and children. This is where that numbering system can also come in kind of handy. Down there on the left, I've got the first form that we talked about with the numbering system. As you are filling out this family group sheets, you might want to take advantage of these numbers to identify which particular family group you're documenting. So if I was documenting my parents, my number two and number three on the pedigree chart there, I might write that number in on the family group sheet so I know just exactly where on my tree it is that I'm talking about and where this family fits into the big picture. And if I do family group sheets for other portions of the tree and other members of the family, I would just use the appropriate number up there again in the chart number area. Let's come back and talk a little bit about some terms that you will probably hear a lot, and it's important to understand. When I'm talking about the maternal side of my family, I'm referring to my mother's side of my family. So again, looking at the family tree here, the information down on the bottom half of the chart would be all of my mother's relatives, and I would refer to that as the maternal half of my family. The paternal side is referring to the father, and I guess this maybe came from a lot of slang for a father as my pa. So think pa, paternal, as a way of remembering that when we talk about paternal, we're talking about information up on the top half of this chart, everybody that is related, or that my father descends from, and everybody in his half of the family. So there's the maternal half and a paternal half. You'll hear those terms used a lot. Another term that is used a lot is half siblings. So if you take a look at a marriage between a man and a woman when they have a child, if either of those parents had have a child with a different person, so exactly I'm showing here that the wife perhaps had a second marriage and a second husband, and if they have a child, those two children would be considered half siblings. They're not full siblings like they would be if they'd been born to the same parents. So you'll also hear this referred to as stepbrothers and stepsisters. Those are all used interchangeably. Now, cousins are and interesting because they get a little bit confusing too. So if I have, again, a family that had children, they are, as we know, siblings, brothers and sisters. If they have children, those children would be considered first cousins because they are the children of siblings. Now, you can carry this out quite a ways. So if those children marry somebody and have children, those children would be second cousins. Okay, because the relationship is, one step further away from where they're actually blood relatives. If those cousins get married and have children, then we would have third cousins. So first cousins, second cousins, third cousins are all kind of equal steps up or down in the family chart, as you can see. The concept of removed cousins happens when you have kind of a dissimilar relationship. So, for example, if one of those third cousins there on the right gets married and has children, or has children, whether or not they get married, the relationship to their third cousin would be of the child. That child would be a third cousin who once removed. So they're not a full third cousin; they're the child of a third cousin, and the relationship with that parent's third cousin, so to speak, would be third cousin who once removed. And you can carry that on forever too. If, again, there's another generation of children, the relationship back to that third cousin of the parent would be a third cousin twice removed. And this could just keep going. It could be three times removed, four times removed, five times removed. A difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp at first. I just keep this chart handy to kind of remind myself of just what exactly those terms mean. All right, so at this point, I'll just stop and ask if there are any questions about what information you should be recording and how it should be recorded. And if not, we'll just move on to the next section. And that is we're going to talk about how to manage your information. As you're going to learn, as you start doing your own research into your own family, you're going to start gathering a lot of information. And you will probably end up with a lot of pieces of paper looking a lot like this. So you may have started with something that you produced some charts, but then you'll start filling in names and drawing arrows and having lines going here and there. And if you're trying to do it all on paper, you're going to realize pretty quickly that it's very, very difficult to keep track of everything. And I think you're pretty quickly going to find that to be a lot happier using some kind of tool to help you manage and track all of your information. Now, you can use a word processor, you can use a spreadsheet, but again, you're going to hit the limits of that very quickly and find that those are just not very useful tools at all. So, um, as I mentioned, that paper is an option, but it's not a good one. The other two choices that you're going to have are to record it in what's known as the cloud, or you can record it on a personal computer. And we'll talk about each of these options in turn. So again, we've talked about paper, as I mentioned. It's very easy to start. It's very portable. Great if you're at a family gathering or out to lunch with a cousin or something to pull out a piece of paper and just jot some stuff down. All you're out is the cost of the paper. The problem is that this gets hard to manage as your tree goes larger, and it gets really difficult to document sources of information and other facts, which is something that is very important for you to do as you start, adding information into your tree. We'll talk about that in just a bit. So paper is easy to start. It's okay to use for, like I said, if you just happen to be having a conversation with somebody, certainly take good notes. But there are some other ways to record information that you will find are probably much more easy to use and much more able to manage all of the information that you're going to be gathering. So if you do take notes sometime in a conversation, you're probably going to want to go back home and use one of these other tools and document what you've learned. So the second choice is recording what's known as the cloud. We used to refer to it as the internet. It is just computers and software that's kind of out there somewhere. And if you can't see me, but I'm waving my arms up in the air. We don't really know where physically this information is stored, but it is available and accessible to you. So there are many sources where you can create a tree in the cloud, in many cases at no cost to you. And then you can access that tree from anywhere that you have access to the internet. And as you'll see, some of these trees will give you hints about information that they have, but you'll have to pay them to get access to the actual record. We'll talk about that in just a bit. The downsides to doing stuff on the cloud is that you may find that you've got some limited features, particularly compared to some of the software that is available to PC, which is your third choice. And I'm talking mainly about doing some reports and charts and things like that. The cloud stuff seems to be a little bit limited right now when you compare to what you can do on some of the PC-based stuff, but that may not be a big concern to start with. The one thing to keep in mind if you're putting stuff up in the cloud is that you want to make sure that you manage the visibility of the information that you're putting up there. In other words, you want to make sure that if you don't want others to be viewing the information, that you set the account up accordingly. And if you just do start sharing information, a lot of us like to share this with siblings and parents and children, what have you. Again, you just want to be very careful about how you grant access to other people so you don't inadvertently make it public and perhaps share some private information that you don't want to share with it. So, there's a little bit of management associated with that. But again, most of these packages have got that pretty well thought out, and we'll walk you through it. It's just a concern that you want to be aware of if you decide to go that direction. Now, some popular choices for doing things in the cloud include companies called like known as Find My Past, Ancestry.com, and MyHeritage. Each of these choices will allow you to build a tree for free and not charge you anything to get started. The thing about MyHeritage is that they will limit you to 250 people in your tree. And if you try to go beyond that, you will then have to start paying them for the privilege of having a much larger tree. That's not true, at least the last time I checked, for Find My Past and Ancestry. So, um, in my opinion, I think that the scale tilts a little bit in their favor as far as where I would start going. The other choice you have, if you have a computer, at home, a laptop or a desktop computer, is that you can purchase some software, some genealogy software, and load it on the computer and work with it right there. The advantages of this is that you have complete control of your information. It's on your computer. As long as nobody has access to your computer, they don't have access to your information. There's a lot more bells and whistles, as I refer to them, that are available with these software packages. And mainly I'm talking about the ability to produce reports and charts about the people in your tree. And some of the software that runs on a personal computer will also offer you the option of syncing up with some of this cloud-based online tools that I just talked about, which is really kind of a pretty neat option. Downside, you still have to do some maintenance. You have to keep, the software on your computer up to date. It's a good idea to make backups so that if something bad happens, you have a backup of your information. And there is usually some cost associated with the software. You generally have to pay something up front to purchase it. But I think you'll find some of the software is really pretty reasonably priced. There are literally dozens of choices out there for you to choose from. Many of them have been around for a while. The two most popular ones today are Family Tree Maker and Roots Magic. And again, there are others, but these are just some of the more modern ones, have some of the more advanced features and are more popular for those reasons, I think. You'll find that Family Tree Maker you can purchase for about $80. Roots Magic is a bit less expensive at about $40. And both of these, again, are very capable and very good. I'll give you a little further information about that in just a bit. If you're just getting started and you don't have any software right now, I would say that probably the best place for you to begin is to go to Ancestry.com and build your tree there. It's free. You may have to give them a credit card number, but you do not have to pay anything just to build a tree. The nice thing about Ancestry.com is that there are no limits to the size of the tree that you can create or for the amount of time that the tree will be there. So it really is free, no strings attached. Now, as you enter information into your tree on Ancestry.com, they will start giving you hints. Say, hey, I've got a census record, or I found a marriage record. If you want to view those records, you will then have to pay Ancestry some money. My advice to everybody would be, as I say, if you haven't chosen anything, I would start here. I would go through and do everything we talked about. Start, with yourself and your parents and your grandparents and document absolutely everything that you know in this tree. And then when you've got some time, when you've got a couple of weeks where you're not going to be distracted by anything else, activate Ancestry's free 2-week trial and go crazy. Look at all the information, get all the records, and fill out your tree. And that's a good way to kind of give Ancestry a trial run and decide, hey, is this environment really good for me? So that's just it. Also, watch for sales around holidays. All of the software packages typically go on sale, so that's another thing to look out for. The other reason why I like Ancestry so much is that it also pairs very well with the Family Tree Maker software. And we'll go back to that. Well, I can't go back to that, but it pairs very well with it. And what that does for you gives you the best of both worlds. You can have the tree on Family Tree Maker on your PC. You can have access to it on the internet on Ancestry.com with a browser. You can also access it with your smartphone or your iPad, and you can sync all of them up. So the beauty of that environment is that if you make a change anywhere from any place, it will sync across to the other three platforms. So that's why, in my personal opinion, I think Ancestry and Family Tree Maker is kind of the best one-two punch. But again, research it yourself and make your own decision. Regardless of what software package you choose, you're going to be able to view your information in a variety of formats. And so one of the views you'll get is this. It looks a lot like the family group sheet because it indicates at the top there are the parents. It shows a little bit below that when they're married, and it lists all of the children resulting from that marriage. And then you can step around and view other people, parents, grandparents, what have you. You can also view it in a tree format like this, and you can start with any person, yourself, or anybody else on the tree, and see as you go back in time, who all of the various relatives that you have documented so far are, and the information that you've documented for them in the tree. Now, again, at this stage, if you've just kind of getting started and you're just building out your tree, you're going to have blanks in there. You're going to have unidentified relatives, and that's just fine. We'll talk a little bit about some additional resources, information that you can start using to build on what you know to start filling in some of these blanks and starting putting some names and information about people. So don't worry about blanks; just skip over them for now. You can come back to them. Another nice thing about genealogy software packages is that you will have the ability to create genealogy reports and charts, and that just kind of helps you visualize your family and all of the people and all of the information that you're eventually going to gather about them. And so these various reports are kind of nice. This is where that family tree numbering that we talked about earlier comes back in again. So I'm looking at generation number 2 here, and you'll notice that I've got the number 2 and the number 3 in front of those names. Well, those correspond to their position in the chart. So, there's the beginning part of it. Again, there's the whole family tree and all the different numbers. But these numbers carry over and are used in reports as well. So that's why it's just kind of handy to know what those numbers represent when you see them in a report. All right. So again, at this point, we'll just stop and I will see if you have any questions about choosing the right environment to document and record the information that you'll be gathering for your family. All right. So where are you now? You have chosen some methodology to document your information. You have gone through and you have filled in all of the information that you know about all of the members of your family that you can identify, but you still got blanks. You've got names that aren't filled in. You have information that you're lacking. Now is the time to start expanding your search and using some other resources that are available to you to start filling in those blanks and fully documenting everybody in your tree. One source that you can turn to is your family. So if you've got family gatherings, if you have reunions and stuff, that's a great time to get information. If you or anybody in your family has saved letters or postcards from previous generations, those are great sources. Pictures, this is just a good time to start reaching out to cousins, aunts, and uncles and say, hey, do you have any pictures? Can you help me identify, who their pictures are, when is it taken, where was it, and start getting information like that. Start looking around for old family Bibles. Hopefully somebody's got a diary or two someplace. So your family internally may have a lot of information that can help you get some information about your family and start filling in some of those blanks. When you've exhausted that, or even while you're doing that, there are a lot of other sources of information that you can begin to look at to get information about your family. One really good source of information, particularly if you're searching somebody here in the United States, is the census records. So the federal government began taking census, and the good ones begin about 1840, 1850. There's useful information in them. Before then, they were just kind of like summaries, head of household and how many females, how many males, that kind of stuff. But from about 1850 forward, both the federal government and then a little bit later, many of the states started recording census every 10 years. And these are great to be able to see who parents are and who children are as you kind of step back through time or step forward through time. So the census records are a great place and probably the best place to start to fill in some information about your tree. Obituaries are great sources of information too. Your good ones will say, they were survived by, and they're sisters and aunts and born and parents. Great sources of information if you can find them. Newspapers also have a lot of great information, again, because they many times carry obituaries. But if there is a local newspaper published around where somebody you're researching live, particularly back, in the 1900s and earlier, you got all these great little society tidbits. Anne Hansen went and visited a cousin, stayed 2 weeks in Lake Geneva, and so you'll get some great stuff there. Deaths, incidents, and things. You can glean a lot of information from them. If your ancestors emigrated or migrated, if they came into this country or left this country, there will be records about that as well. And so you can start looking through the migration records to see if you can discover more information about where they came from, when they came, where they went. If they owned land or paid taxes, you're going to find lots of information about them there as well. And military records. If they served in the military at any point in time, there's likely to be a record of that and a great source of information for those kinds of information as well. And as you go through all these different types of information, they're going to suggest other types of records that may be of interest. Did your relative belong to some kind of fraternal organization? Um, just any little nugget of information that you can identify about your ancestors might give you that aha moment of, oh, that's just the piece of information I needed to fill in that little blank in my tree there. So be open to different types of information because it's surprising what you'll dig up. Now, there are some rules of the road when it comes to documenting information about your ancestors. And the first thing to understand, and it's surprising, just how many times you will run into records for somebody that has the exact same name of the person you're researching. In the heat of the moment, it's really easy to get excited and go, ooh, ooh, ooh. I just found their birth record. I just found the military record. I just found them in the census. And you just need to make certain as you find records that the record you have identified is truly the one for the person you are researching. I've even had people who have had the same names who were born very nearly at or on the same day. So as you start finding records, you have the obligation to do due diligence and make sure that record that you found really is for the person that you're researching. The other obligation you have is to identify the source of every piece of information you gather about a person. This is called citing your sources. So if I claim that this person was married in the 10th of March 1876, I should have some document, some record that I found where I got that information from. As I put that information into my tree, I should then also document the source of that information. Was it a marriage record? Was it an article in a newspaper? Was it something somebody told me? What? But whatever the source of that information or whatever the source is, that's the great thing that the software provides for you is the ability to record information about the source of that information. And it ought to be described well enough that you or anybody using your research can go back and find the source and verify for themselves that you actually did indeed have, the right person, the right day, the right location. It's a hard habit to get into, but it's really important. Like I said, I've been doing my research for 25 years now, and I go back and look at some of the research that I did when I first got started, and I find myself scratching my head like, well, how do I know that? Where did this information come from? It's a good habit to get into early and just be as accurate as you can. So, in citing, you want to describe the document. You want to state where you found the document and when you found it. Particularly online, when is important because online information changes a lot. So if you say you found it at ancestry.com in 2005, a lot happened in that intervening 20 years. So again, the date that you access something is important to record along with where. Now, there's many sources of information, a lot of them that you can pay for, but one that is absolutely free, and it's just a fabulous source for genealogists, is familysearch.org. So the address, it's www.familysearch.org down there at the bottom of the screen. It is a website, and it's just got tons of information for genealogists. So you have to create an account. It is free. They don't want credit cards. They will not bother you. They won't sell your information. It is as upfront as it can possibly be. When you get there, you'll find that they have records. So they have information, birth, marriage, death, census, all kinds of records. Not as much as like an ancestry or my heritage, but a lot of them. And again, these are all free. They have images, so things that are not yet indexed, but they'll have pictures of documents. They'll have pictures. They'll have maps. They have family trees, and we'll talk about that back in a minute. And genealogies. This is where somebody has already done some research about a family or about a piece of their family and have documented up there. They have a catalog of information, so you can go back and see what they have. They've been digitizing books like crazy. And they also have something known as a research wiki. Now, wiki is a place where anybody can go in and modify information. What their wiki is focused on is researching and doing genealogy. So in their wiki, you will find, for example, they have information about how to do any particular type of research: German, Russian, Irish, American, American Indian, what have you. They'll have information about how to research and what types of records you can find to help you in that research. So, fabulous source of information, a fabulous resource, absolutely free. No genealogist should be without it. I'm again just kind of recap. They've read last time I checked 5 billion records, and they've got them digitized so you can step through them. You can search through all of the records that they've been indexed, and you can find information about them. So, for example, to show you how you would go about doing some research, I'm going to look for John Bryan, one of the founders of the city of Dallas. What I know about him was his name, John Bryan. I believe he lived in, as you can see, that's the city of Dallas, the county of Dallas, and they look for any kind of date when that person lived. They typically go with the birth date, and with just that bit of information, I was able to find this. It's a census record identifying him and his family. Now it's a little hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in on some stuff. But here's the basic information it found about John and Brian. This is the 1850 census, identifying he was a 39-year-old male. Estimates he was born in 1811 in Tennessee. He was white. This is the 1850 census, where he lived, and some other information like that. So that was the information about him. It also will list other people that are listed as identified as living in this household. So that's just a little bit further. Again, I made it a bit bigger so we can see it. And this identifies somebody as Margaret Bryan, who was his wife, 25 years old, and then three children: John Bryan, Francis Bryan, and Edward Bryan, 5, 3, and 1 years old, respectively. So this is a particular census record about John Bryan. And one of the things that you can do is you can view the original document. You can actually view the digitized image of it. And this is a very important thing to do because, no surprise there, it shows the handwritten information that we just saw that had been indexed and was recorded that we were able to search on. So, about John, his wife, and his children. But down below it, there are other people living with John Bryan and his family. And that wasn't identified on that the previous page. I wouldn't have known it if I didn't go and look at the digitized document. And so it's just always important when you're researching and looking at documents to try to get back to look at the original, because not everything is indexed. Not all information is taken from this document and recorded in something that you can search and you can see. And there may be surprises. And so, in researching John Bryan, that natural question is, who are these people? Are they just really good friends? Chances are, given the time, they're probably relatives. And so, as you're researching families, this would be, a really good information, additional people to go back and research to see if you can trace the family further back in time. So always look at the original and see if you can find some additional information there. And as I mentioned, these people down here were not listed in the digitized version, and that's why, again, why looking at the image is very important. This page also is going to have the ability to copy the citation. So I mentioned the importance of citing the source of your information. So as you were taking information from this and recording it about John Bryan and the various family members, it would be important to make sure you use the citation ability to document where the information came from. And so if you click on that button, it'll say something, well, you can see there, it's in the 1850 census, gave the URL that it came from, when it was accessed, and it was an entry for John and Brian and Margaret Bryan. So with this, somebody could go back into the 1850 census, look up this record, and identify and view the record that you cited as the source of the various pieces of information that you use. Now, I talked a little bit about the family tree, and this is a really powerful and a really interesting thing, but used with caution. And I'll show you and tell you why. So, unlike looking for documents, here I'm actually looking for people. And so I'm going to go back and do the same type of search again, but I'm going to look for John and Brian in this family tree, and I'm going to find a record for him. And so this again is kind of like a family tree, sort of. It's identifying him, identifies his parents. A little further on down, will identify his spouse and his children. And there's various ways that you can view the information about people that are in the tree. So here's a little bigger view of that. Again, that's him, this is family members, and some other information that they're presenting to you that you might want to research. Now, note, whoever did this identified 12 sources for information about the information that's presented here. That is good research, and that is what you want to do in your own research, and it's really what you want to do up here. Now, why is this tree both a good thing and a bad thing? Well, unlike the family tree that you would be working on if you've got uh, your own copy of software on your PC, or if you're working on your own Ancestry.com account or something up in the cloud, those are all your trees. You don't have to share them with anybody, and you can do whatever you want. And unless you allow somebody access to it, nobody can do anything to the data in those trees. This tree on the famous search site is crowdsourced. It is one big tree. And their ultimate goal is to identify everybody who has ever lived and is currently living in this one tree. So in this environment, you don't have your tree. We have our tree. And absolutely anybody can go in here and can view it and can see it and can add information to it. They can delete information. They can change it. So this is not a place that I recommend starting out for you. This is because you can't control the information that's up here. It's a great resource, though, to see if somebody's already done some searching on your family, because you may identify really good records like this, 12 sources cited in this one. What a great discovery this would be if this was your family. So it's a good place to go to and to get hints and to get ideas. I would avoid putting anything up there until you're a little further along in your genealogy career. Again, you can view the information in a multitude of ways. So this is showing John and Margaret, uh, their parents and grandparents, and their children, just another view. And like I said, it's a great resource. It is free. Just be a little cautious about believing anything that's up there because you got to consider the source, so to speak. However, you've also considered the fact that there are about 13 billion names, and probably more since I checked that figure, in this tree. It's growing every day. So chances are, if you're researching your family, you're going to find branches and bits and pieces of your family history already here, already documented. Go there and get all the hints, pull that back into your tree, and make it as complete and as accurate as you can. This research wiki is also a phenomenal resource. One of the things that it has is just how to do, for example, beginning genealogy. So they've got all kinds of good information about starting your history, how to organize it, some of the very things that we've been talking about. And so that is all documented right there and free for you to go to and to find. They also have information about every corner of the world that you can imagine. So you can go to the wiki and say, I need to have information about this particular part of the world. And it's just clickable. So you can go to this map and click on the part of the world you're interested in. Or you can also type in information. So for example, if I'm interested in information about the city of Dallas and Dallas County, I can go look and see the information that they have about that. So there is a wiki page, and it has information about the history of the city of Dallas, our city government, birth, marriage, death, divorce, burial records, and sources for that, land and location records, and just lots and lots of other information. Again, this is all a wiki. So anybody, including you, can go here, you can view this information, and you can add to the base of knowledge. So if you've discovered something unique about the city of Dallas that nobody else has yet documented, you can go here and add that to it and contribute to the world's knowledge about the city of Dallas or any place else. But they have these for just about anywhere in the world, just about any topic in the world related to genealogy. And again, it's a phenomenal resource. And again, it's all free. So as you click on a particular area, so for example, if I clicked on that green Asian mass, it's going to list all of the countries there. And I can go down the list and pick which country in particular I'm interested in studying. If I click on South America, then again, I'm going to get a list of countries there, which I can drill down to and read about how to do research there. And there's Africa. Now, as I keep emphasizing, that is all free, but there are commercial sources available to you where you can pay additional money sometimes by the month. Usually they give you a break if you pay by the year. And you'll have access to all of the information or all the records that they have behind what's referred to as a paywall. There are three very popular ones: Find My Past, Ancestry.com, and MyHeritage. These prices were accurate in about mid 2025, I think. So you just verify them to be sure. Find My Past, its strength is in the United Kingdom and Ireland records. That's really their focus. They have information about the rest of the world. But if you're researching people from that part of the world, that's a pretty good thing to consider. MyHeritage, they have strength in European records. Again, they have lots of stuff about the United States as well, but that's kind of their strength. And then Ancestry just has lots of information about everywhere. Um, so it has a very, very large collection of records. One additional strength that I think Ancestry also has going for it is you can link your DNA search to your family tree fairly easily. Associating trees with DNA in MyHeritage is a little more challenging and doesn't integrate very well. So again, I'm not a paid anybody for Ancestry. I don't get any kind of kickbacks. Personally, I find that environment really good. I have a subscription to MyHeritage and I use it. I've on occasions paid for Find My Past, but Ancestry is kind of where I hang my hat when it comes to genealogy research. But again, make your own decision and choose what you think is going to be best for your needs. So that's about all that I'm going to mention about resources for finding more information. So, do you have any questions about that? Yeah, I'd also like to talk a little bit about some additional resources that you might want to consider as you go through your genealogical career. And one of them is DNA. You can take a DNA test, and it can be very helpful in helping you identifying relatives. In particular, it's going to help you identify living relatives because those are the people that are also taking DNA tests. The good thing about finding living relatives is that you might be able to trace them back and find out where your common ancestors are, or find other additional relatives that you couldn't find through conventional genealogical stuff, which typically has embargoes, usually at least 75 years on a lot of records. So DNA gives you a really good insight into living people and people that you're not going to be able to find through conventional genealogical research. DNA also may bring unwarranted surprises. So this is a record that was a match indicating this person is a sibling because we shared a high amount of DNA material. I'm not going to get into all that. That's a subject for another topic. But just looking at this person and seeing the amount of DNA that we share, the relationship between this person and the person that donated their DNA sample is irrevocable, irrequestionable. They are siblings. Surprise comes in, what if you didn't know that you had this sister? It happens. So there's all kinds of out of wedlock things that happen. They tend to get hidden, deep, dark down into this family secrets, and DNA is exposing all of this. So if you don't want to be confronted with the possibility of discovering that perhaps your parents aren't actually your genetic parents, or you're not interested in discovering if you have a half sibling out there that nobody in the family knew about, don't take the DNA test. But if you're interested and open and willing to make discoveries like this, then by all means, head for it. But again, that's about all that we're going to mention about DNA in this presentation. If you'd like to learn some more, we being the Dallas Genealogical Society, would love to help. We have monthly meetings 9 months out of the year. We have several interest groups. Our main way of raising funds is the 3 seminars that we offer each year. Those are the only things that we charge for. Most of our meetings are held in person down at the J. Eric Johnson Central Library in downtown Dallas. You can go to our website and get all kinds of information about all the things that we do, including getting started in genealogy. If you go to that home button and go down to the Getting Started in Genealogy section, you'll see that we have a lot of information that you've seen listed on your handout and links that will take you directly to them. So lots of places that you can go to get forms, more information, and other information about researching your family. I mentioned that we have these monthly meetings. They're generally held September through May at 11 o'clock in the morning on the first Saturday of each month. You can come on down to the library and join us in person. You can join us via Zoom and just watch us at home wearing your bunny slippers. We generally record the meetings And with the speaker's permission, we will record their presentations as well. We always have a speaker at the general meeting talking about something related to genealogy and genealogical research. And again, these are all open to the public, and we invite you to join us and participate any way that you care to. So, for example, on December 7th, we had John Slate, who was the Dallas City Archivist. This is December 7th, 2024. He was talking about the genealogy resources at the Dallas Municipal Archives, right downtown, in fact, right across the street from the library. Fascinating sources of lots of information about the history of Dallas. We have interest groups that meet each month, and again, these are open to the public. You do not need to be a member of the organization to participate in them. And I will refer you to the website to check the current schedule for the meeting times and locations. We do offer seminars each year. I did them, actually 3 seminars each year. As I mentioned, we do charge for these. This is how we get the funds that we use to support the library and do the other things that we as an organization do. Again, I'll refer you to our website for information about the current seminars. The Dallas Public Library is also quite active in genealogy. They have a fabulous genealogical collection up on the 8th floor of the Central Public Library, one of the 10 best genealogy libraries in the country. They have a very knowledgeable staff, and they do a lot of stuff. They will help you do some research. And so just give them a call or stop on by. And again, you can check the Dallas Public Library website for more information about them. At the library, they also have some terminals that have access to a library version of Family Search, or excuse me, the free version of Family Search, which you can get to from home. But they also have a library version of Ancestry.com. So you can go there, access most of what Ancestry.com has to offer, and not have to pay anything. And they have several other genealogy databases of interest that you would also find useful as well. They've also created several creative spaces, and up on the 8th floor, the one they have is focused on digitizing your stuff. So whether it be paper records, videos, audio recordings, anything, they can probably digitize it for you there. And so again, that's on the 8th floor. They've got some training videos that you go through to learn how to use the various types of equipment that you're going to use. You sign up and you go in there and digitize your stuff all that you want. Again, no charge. They also offer a lot of events. And so as they roll through the year, they'll have presentations at the library. Again, they also do stream them on Zoom. So again, check the library website and see what's going on there. And perhaps they've got a presentation that's going to be of interest and suitable for what you need to learn. The library also has branches all over the city. So they don't all have the features that the downtown branch has. But if you live near one of these other branch libraries, they do have some genealogy resources there as well. So check with the closest one and see what they have. Maybe it's easier to get there than it is to schlep downtown all the way. I want to leave you just with one thought, though. We are living in a digital age. Everything's on our phones. It's all in the cloud. It's not like our ancestors where they wrote letters and they took and printed physical pictures and did a lot of things that we're all reaping the benefit of. And so I just encourage you to think a little bit about the researchers, the genealogists yet to come, not yet interested in genealogy or perhaps not even born. Make sure your stuff's kind of organized. If you do have things, organize them, put them in some folders, label them. Perhaps you've got memorabilia from family events or trips, what have you. If you have pictures, take a pencil and write on the back of them, and help people. Write the date, the location, and the names of the people that appear in the photographs. Even if they're not your photographs, if there's pictures you've gotten from your relatives, do this now so that people coming behind you have a chance of identifying who's in that picture. And preserve your own story. Again, our parents, our grandparents left all kinds of records that we're not leaving anymore. When my computer goes away and my iPhone goes away, so much information about me and about what I know is just going to be gone. So, consider writing stories about your life. Start a diary. Just write your life story. Make video or audio recordings in some place that's going to endure. Leave something of yourself behind for your family and for future researchers. Share what you remember about your parents and your siblings. Document about where you grew up, where you went to school, or where you lived as an adult. Talk about the people who made an impact on your life, your career. Did you travel, have a really interesting vacation someplace? Talk about that. Anything about your life is going to be fascinating to people who come along behind you. So just take the time to try to leave some type of a record. If you're a veteran, the Dallas Public Library would love to help you do this. They have a Veterans Oral History Project going, where they will sit down with you. They'll have somebody who will interview you, ask you questions, and provide you with a recording and preserve that recording as well. You can also go to StoryCorps. This is a very simple, easy to use tool, runs on any smartphone. It's very easy to use, and they will guide you through making these little, very short little 5-minute vignettes. They recommend picking something, take a picture or a letter or some significant event in your life, and sit down, use the recording tools that they give you on the phone, and tell the story. You'll have access to the recording, and again, they will archive it and preserve it for the future. So I hope I have done many things here. I hope that I've given you appetite and a better understanding of how to go about recording information about your family, the tools that you can use to do it, and more importantly, the importance of documenting your life as well. I think it's just important for all of us to leave some kind of a record, some history, for our lives for the future. And I hope that I encourage you to do that. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention.